Hello. Woo. What's up, everybody? It's Halloween, and we're doing a roundtable. It's going to be a great time. We are hanging out tonight, talking all things High Republic Phase 2. I'm very excited. We got the whole crew. I hope you're having a great evening. And without any further ado, Wes, punch it! That's the last one. What is up, everybody? Hello, and welcome to the Living Force UTD Network podcast, all about the High Republic and some spooky things, in this book at least. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight to talk about all things Path of Deceit is the full cast of characters, starting off with Dr. Corey Spelton.
Ooh, there's red behind me. It means evil. I changed nothing. Just kidding. This is the thing I always have.
I
Hello,
like
everybody.
your costume, Corey.
Yeah, thanks, man. My costume is I am not a Star Wars fan. That's
It's
my costume.
just a
because
white shirt.
I am just realizing that I forgot to put a Star Wars shirt on right before the show. So that's my. And I have AirPods in. Oh, I know. I am Eric if he stopped giving a shit about anything.
Hey, I'm honored.
You look like a video game character on level 1.
I am. That's what I am. I know. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
I got no stats or skill points yet, bro.
You
I
don't.
know. I don't have beer. I mean, there's a lot of things that are changed. I'm drinking tea tonight. Everything is different. I don't
It's
know.
a spooky evening. We're in the upside down,
It
if
is.
you will. That's what you are. You're the
Yeah.
upside down version of Corey. You may have also just heard the dulcet tones of Dr. Charles Hank. Oh no, see you in hell.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go with like Hank Ghoul or something like that.
That would have been better.
I like it. I like it. I am dressed up as Emperor Palpatine headed to the gym. That's who I am tonight.
Gotta get those gains, Lord Vader. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, the man who has punched this ticket so many times. Also, shout out to Ryan, our graphic designer, for that awesome new little intro. If you didn't see it, check out the YouTube show. We have Wes Jenkins. I couldn't find it. Wes Jenkins. I'm sorry, buddy.
Happy Halloween, everyone. Apologies in advance here. My dog going crazy because people are knocking on the door. I have my lights turned off, but they're still knocking on the door. So, you know,
Those dang
Very
kids.
insistent in Texas, huh?
yeah, I mean, I was going to leave candy out, but there would be one person that got all of the candy, and then the rest of the people would see that I was a bad person for leaving no candy, just an empty bucket for people in a dark corridor that didn't have the porch light on. So, anyways,
that's the trick.
happy
That's the trick.
Halloween.
That's the trick for the treat, is that you just put out
Just
an
don't buy
empty
candy.
bowl.
Don't buy candy.
Yeah.
Put out an empty bowl. Be like, oh, I guess you didn't get the end of it. Sorry. Well, whatever.
They got to learn some point. Well, for all you watching this, I will hope, number one, you got some candy, or if you're watching us today, you're going to go to the grocery store tomorrow and get that clearance Halloween candy, which we all love. Make sure you hit all that. I personally bought a bag of the fruit Tootsie Rolls, the fruit flavored Tootsie Rolls, and ate the entire thing in 2 days.
Let me see that Tootsie Roll.
And I did in my mouth. It was delightful. But everyone, I hope you're having a lovely Halloween and a lovely week. I'm so glad you've chosen to spend some of your week with us. Whether you're watching on YouTube, you're listening on your podcatcher of choice. Hi, we love you. We're excited to talk about the High Republic today. Before we do so, just a couple of brief announcements. Number one, if you're watching us on YouTube, you may notice a lovely book here to my left, your right, my left, stage left, as it were, which is our friends at Abrams sent over The Art of Star Wars: The High Republic by Kristen Baver. This has been one of my most anticipated books since it was announced for months and months and months. And I've had the chance to look through it a little bit. And I know that a lot of folks have already pre-ordered this. It comes out on November 8th. If you have pre-ordered it, expecting lots of High Republic goodness, you're going to get exactly that. There is more art in this book than I've seen in any of the art of books so far, like the art of the films, art of the Mandalorian. This has more concept sketches, things like that, than anything we've seen so far. Here, I'll give you a little tease, right? So a lot of the pages are just full art pages with just a little bit of quotation on them. We see characters that don't exist in the High Republic yet. We see characters that we love, and the evolution of their looks, things like that. You get to see how Ember used to be a different looking dog. All kinds of stuff like that. And for those folks that may just be getting into the High Republic and want to go straight for the art, Kristen Baver does a lovely, lovely job of outlining kind of the history of the initiative. I think a lot of us take for granted how much we know about the High Republic, about how it came to pass, we know about the Skywalker Ranch Summit, we know about the meetings, we know Michael Stiglane. A lot of folks don't know that, and that's okay. So if you are a little behind on knowing the history of the High Republic, or you have a friend that wants to know more about it and not listen to all of our freaking podcast episodes about it, frankly, rude. But the High Republic, art of the High Republic is definitely going to have all that in the beginning of it. And for any diehard fan, come on. We would love every single piece of concept art we've ever gotten.
Anything from Path of Deceit in there? Like
no,
Kevmo
great
or
question.
anything?
Great question. So this encompasses Phase 1 of Star Wars The High Republic.
Oh,
So
wow.
we get a lot of characters from Phase 1, right? So all the way through like Out of the Shadows, all the things like that, all the way through Wave 3, we get Marchion Ro, went through a ton of designs, by the way, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff from the comics, both the High Republic Adventures and the main run, as well as all the books, the audio dramas, all kinds of stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's a
you'll
nice
get-
little companion piece that you have there while you're reading the books. It's like
That's
the
it.
character encyclopedias that I have next to me when I was watching the Clone Wars, so I could figure
God,
out
I
who
love
all these
those.
people were.
Exactly.
'Cause I'm-
Like Starlight Beacon, you want to know what all levels are? There you go. It's right in the book. It's going to tell you before they all go underwater. What does it all agree? And Charles, this is just for you. Because we talk about the station and Into the Dark, we get Snoke in his stupid hat.
Oh, yes.
Officially in the
very
book.
good, very
Station
good.
and Snoke's hat.
So, thank you so much to our friends at Abrams for sending this along. The preview is exactly what I'd hoped it would be. Seriously, it is dense, full of art. And if you love the High Republic, you're going to absolutely love this. With the holidays coming around the corner, especially, put it on the Amazon wish list. It comes out November 8th from Kristen Baber, Art of Star Wars The High Republic. Amazing stuff. Speaking of amazing stuff, he segued. Utini Fantasy Update. Pretty happy about it this week. Wes, if I look at this, you and I are both riding high, man. We both won in the same week.
Yes,
It has not happened yet.
I rode the wave of Jalen Hurts. He's a damn good quarterback. I also got a hell of a lot of points from Tony Pollard. Thanks for being out, Ezekiel. I hope you're okay next week. But I also hope you get like disciplined or something and you get benched, but you're medically cleared and you're okay.
That's right. That's what we want. I don't want anyone to get hurt, but I do want my starters to play well.
I don't want you to play.
Yes. I was fortunate enough to ride the wave of Mr. Christian McCaffrey,
boy.
who threw a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, and received a touchdown for the first time since LaDainian Tomlinson in 2005. And then the Panthers backup running back, Deontay Foreman. I picked him up when they traded Christian McCaffrey, so my running backs did very well for me.
Former Houston Texan.
That's right.
You're like,
and former
That's a thing.
Texas Longhorn, our buddy Us. They're a team. So well done for me and Wes. And I just wanted to gloat about that a bit because that has not happened yet. It probably will not happen again. But Wes and I are having a good weekend ourselves. Hold on. Stephanie Mack in the chat asked for something very important just now. For anyone looking at us visually, she said to show the cover of the book without the dust jacket. And that's because it is a gorgeous illustration of Starlight Beacon.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I forgot about that. I remember
Aloft,
when they announced
too.
that
That's
now. I
nice.
remember it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I might
there you
keep
go.
it like that.
Yeah, you may want to. And then you got this glorious ba bing. So it also says Volume 1 at the bottom there for Star Wars: The Art of the High Republic.
Of course it does.
So, oh yeah, we're going to get more. Very excited. Now, last couple updates before we jump into our roundtable tonight. I want to shout out a couple of our writers on the team, Gia and Emmy, who wrote 2 amazing pieces for the website about the High Republic. The first of those is a guide on what you need to know about Phase 2 of the High Republic. So what kind of story points do you need to know about? What books are coming out? We have a great guide all about that on the website. And we have a book or article. There's a bunch of books. We have an article all about who the authors are behind Phase 2 of the High Republic. Who is returning? Who are the new ones? What are some things that they have written? Make sure you head over to utini.com, scroll down to the guides tab at the bottom, and you're going to see all of our latest guides. They're really going to help you get all ready for Phase 2. All right. And thank you guys for your amazing work. And sorry, I didn't mention this last week because we didn't have a show last week. Check out the Utini YouTube channel. We just recently had a lovely video all about the best Star Wars reading order made by our very own Parker. It's our most common question. 4 days ago, we posted it. Go ahead, check it out and see what order you should read your Star Wars books in. Hint, there's not one real order, but we made a video anyway. All right. Finally, I want to say thank you because, fellas, we got a brand new patron this week. Yesterday, Justin joined our Patreon. Justin, thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying everything that goes on over at patreon.com/Utini. And also, you get that little warm feeling knowing that you are the reason that the site can function, that the podcast can function, that everything we do can be brought up to the community. All right. Well, everybody, that is almost it. As we always do at this time, I want to tell you about the new releases that are coming up, including tomorrow's November 1st, The High Republic Quest for the Hidden City by George Mann. As always, we're going to have a written review and a video review of this book at utini.com and at the website, or at the YouTube channel. Make sure you check those out. We love George over here. I did write this review, and I'll just tell you, freaking nailed it. This book is so much fun. Full review out tomorrow. And of course, The Art of Star Wars, The High Republic comes out on November 8th. All right. Without any further ado, Charles, I'm going to hand this roundtable over to you, but this roundtable is going to be a little different. Tell the folks this new format we're going to try out and what that means for them as we talk about Path of Deceit.
Yeah, it is going to be a little bit different. We're trying to make these a little bit more free form, if you will. We found ourselves getting a little bit too boxed into the strict structure that we had for all of these. And so we're still going to give you a plot synopsis. We're still going to end things with Easter eggs, but in the middle, it's going to just be a whole lot of everyone piping up and talking about the things that excited us most. Because that's how we want to spend this time, is talking about the good things that got us excited, the big questions we have. So that's how we're going to do it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the plot synopsis. Sunshine Dobbs arrives on Dalna to meet with the Mother, the charismatic leader of the Path of the Open Hand, a group focused on liberating the Force from being controlled by others, including the Jedi. Sunshine brings her a mysterious jewel, and she sends him back out into the galaxy to search for a set of 3 other Force artifacts: the Rod of Ages, the Rod of Seasons, and the Rod of Daybreak. Marta Rowe and her cousin Yana, 2 of the last known Evereni in the galaxy, live as members of the Path of the Open Hand. Marta is a devout believer and longs to serve as one of the Mother's closest confidants, the children, like her cousin. However, Marta doesn't know that the children are actually responsible for stealing artifacts for the Mother, and that Yana wants out. Padawan Kevmo Zink and his master Zala Makri arrive on Dalna to investigate the Path as the possible culprits for a string of heists. Kevmo meets Marta in the market, and there's an instant attraction. But when Kevmo uses the Force in front of her, she's mortified. They spend their ensuing days debating whose approach to the Force is right. But despite their fundamental differences, their connection to one another is deep and undeniable. When heavy rains roll in, Dalna unexpectedly floods, including the Path's underground network of tunnels. Kevmo and Marta work together to save a family stuck in the caves, including 3 newborns. Kevmo has to use the Force to hold back floodwaters, and afterwards, Marta realizes she can't condemn Kevmo's use of the Force if it leads to good. Yana informs the Mother she intends to leave the Path, but the Mother demands one last job before she goes. Yana agrees, but notices that the Mother seems to be developing an unhealthy bond with her mysterious jewel. When Marta learns of Yana's plan to leave, they get into an argument. In the aftermath, Kevmo comforts Marta and they kiss. Marta realizes that she doesn't need to be one of the children to further the goals of the Path. Instead, she could leave with Yana and go to Jeddah to spread their message. She asks the Jedi for passage off of Dalna when they leave.
The children head to Thelge to infiltrate a Graf family compound, but their cover is blown and everyone is killed except for Yana. She realizes they were set up and returns to Dalna to confront the Mother for her treachery. When Yana arrives in the Mother's chambers, she instead finds Kevmo and Zala, who have raided the Path's caves and found the Rod of Seasons as proof of the cult's evil deeds. But as they attempt to take the Mother into custody, her prized jewel shatters and releases an amorphous creature. It attacks Zala, turning her to stone. It grabs Kevmo next, but he pulls away and flees, intent on warning the galaxy about what he witnessed. Marta stumbles upon Kevmo as he collapses, slowly but surely also turning into stone before her eyes. With his final breath, he is able to say, "Mother." Distraught, Marta takes his lightsaber and heads for the Mother's chambers. The Mother introduces the creature to the rest of the path as the Leveler and touts it as their solution to the Jedi's abuse of the Force. Yana attempts to leave, but the Leveler follows her. She realizes it's because she's holding the Rod of Seasons, which she took back from the Jedi, but she is declared the Leveler's champion. She accepts the title, hoping to use the opportunity to overthrow the Mother in the near future. Marta finds the rest of the path, and the Leveler is presented to her. She is shocked to see what she considers to be the will of the Force in physical form. The Mother rewards her adherence by naming her the path's new guide. She instructs the path to board the newly built Gaze Electric and head out into the stars, stating their time on Dalna is over. Behind closed doors, the Mother tasks Sunshine with going to Jedha to steal the Rod of Daybreak, an artifact she hopes can win her back control of the Leveler from Yana. Aboard the Gaze Electric, Yana hopes Marta can take the Mother's place at the head of the path, but she grows concerned when she finds that Marta's newfound power is already twisting her from a gentle-natured believer into a crazed zealot. Not long after, Jedi Knight Aslan Rel searches the abandoned path compound for answers about the disappearance of Kevmo and Zala. When he finds their remains, he realizes that whatever evils were unleashed on Dalna are already on their way to the rest of the galaxy.
All right. So that's everything that happened. The vast majority of that outline was from the last 30 pages of the book.
For real.
Now, let's take a moment to reflect as we always do. I want y'all to just tell me generally, what format did you experience the story? What major takeaways did you get from the experience? And what new value did this book bring to you?
Yeah. So I read this book all digitally, I guess. I didn't do any audiobook listening on it. And I'll tell you what, this book is super unique in High Republic experience because I think a lot of us had a similar vibe. As Charles said, so much of the action happens in the last 30, 100, whatever pages of this book. And I got to tell you, the beginning of this book up to that point, I was not a huge fan of it. I've seen a lot of people freaking out over this book online, which has been incredible. And I love that. And I'm really having a great time with seeing people just adore this book. Didn't hit me in that same way. With just the relationships of the characters at the beginning, I liked seeing the path of the open hand, but I felt like I kept waiting for the momentum to hit. But I will say, after I finished the book, I was left with this high adrenaline spike because of all the action of Marta leading now the path of the open hand, of Yana with the Rod of Seasons, all these kind of things happening. We get to see the Leveler again. We get the dusting. I felt that rising storm adrenaline. That I had this moment of okay, I think I really liked that, but hold on, weren't there 230 pages where I didn't really get into it, which was odd. So Charles, to answer your question of what takeaways did I get from the experience, I got this thing of really philosophically wondering if a book's ending being awesome is good enough for the whole book to kind of even out. And for me, it's been about a month or so since I finished it, I'm kind of at that point where the book almost exists as an idea of what happened at the end. Of the consequences of this, I'm super stoked about, and it's gotten me really hyped for Cavan's Path of Vengeance, because now we got the momentum that usually I would want in the first 100 pages. So, yeah. So I'm conflicted on this book. A very odd experience, but I think at the end I had a good time. It was very weird.
Yeah. I saw it to where it was two different points of view, one with the path and one of the Jedi and how they were conflicting, and not one I thought it was interesting in a way where they weren't really fighting with each other. They were kind of listening and kind of understand, but they also disagreed with each other, which was a good, good lesson of teaching somebody how to, be in conflict with somebody and not actually bring it to violence. Just that you can actually talk it out. You can disagree with them, but you don't always have to agree with what's going on. So, yes, I thought this was slow in the beginning and got awesome at the end. They really spoiled us with Lie to the Jedi for my take on this. Because
it's this issue, man.
So I wanted to get right to the point. I think, it could have been, it could have been shorter in the beginning, but we would also had a very short book if you had shortened the two different points of view. But then again, you're right. I mean, it was a little slow, but the ending was great. Ending was great. I mean, they gave us the point that we were wanted. They got the leveler. We got dead people or dead Jedi. So,
if you will,
it kind of paid off at the end. So, it's worth going through. But sorry, and just so everybody knows, I took in the audiobook. The audiobook was fantastic.
Right.
They did a great job.
Did you think it moved as slow in the beginning with the audiobook format?
Yes, it did. I think it moved.
Still felt it moved slow?
It still felt slow. And I was listening to it at 1.1 speed, so not super fast.
Because you're not a monster.
Exactly. I listened but 3 times the speed. I don't know how you can even hear the pauses in between people's words when they speak at 3 times the speed.
I'm sure that's been studied, and you actually can't comprehend shit when they do that. But
Get out! The leveler! No, run!
That's how Charles and I learned, all the science of the human body. So, I'm guaranteed that we didn't learn any of it actually that well by listening to it at that speed. What about you, Charles? How did you feel about this one?
I mean, I think I felt similarly. I like the way that you frame that, Eric, that is the ending enough to make up for the rest of it? I don't know that I would say that the answer is yes, but as I'm listening to y'all talk, I think this might have been a little bit on me for how I experienced the beginning of this book, because I viewed, phase 2 as like a continuation, even though it's a prequel, like a continuation of all that momentum from phase 1. And it really can't be. This is the first part of basically a new story from this point out.
It's a great point.
And there's a ton of legwork you got to do, right? You got to build the world over again. It's a different time period, even though it's still within the High Republic. And so, if you accept that and say, okay, it was never going to be that rising storm, it was never going to be anything like that, then I think that it actually did a really good job, because that ending was such a launch point for the rest of the phase that now my excitement levels are ramped up, and that's what a part 1 should do. Right. So I think in that respect, it was actually very successful. I have my qualms with it, and we'll get into those, smaller things, but I do think it was a successful start to a new phase.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would mostly agree with pretty much all that. I mean, like I'm definitely in the camp that I thought it moved really slow, and, rather than getting into all that, I'd rather just kind of ask some really big picture questions kind of about the book of do you guys think it was, we asked this actually a couple weeks back when we did our preview for the phase 2 of do you guys think it was a good choice to maybe start with the young adult book? Because before we actually get into the book, let's get a little meta about it, because this is very interesting that they decided to go this route. And it feels like maybe they're trying to do that thing that they don't really have to do, I guess, a little bit of trying to push the importance of the other mediums a little bit. And I don't know that it's really necessary to do that, because they have kind of target audiences, and I don't think 4 white dudes were the target audience of for adult 30-year-old Western old men plus white dudes were
I'm still in my 30s, you jerk.
We're the target of a young adult book that was, largely kind of Handmaid's Tale kind of book,
But I think we got what we needed to get out of the story. We found out sort of the origin of the leveler, but we still don't know really the origin of the mother. We know that she talks like she's on a cloud in the audiobook anyways. And
she's on a cloud. What, really far away?
She sounds like she's like, oh, hello, everyone.
Oh, is that the audiobook?
That's what she sounds like. It's great.
Don't like that at all.
I don't like that either.
Well, I'll say it was interesting for me because I mean, for me, as with a lot of folks, my first Star Wars book, for real, was YA, was Lost Stars. And I think that if you use the medium in a certain way, it can absolutely be targeted for all kinds of different audiences. Whereas this particular one, I think that once we got to, I think I wrote down page 230 or something, right on chapter 23, 26, I wrote in my notes literally oh my God, this picked up. And it
does really pick up suddenly.
Yeah. And it's the same book, and that is the same demographic. And I think it's less of we started with a YA versus started not. It's that we started out with a story that just happened to be on a much smaller scale and was kind of, it was, I will say this. I think it was odd to start with a book where a lot of the action and buildup was at the end, when most folks that are reading it, we know that this is going to present a giant beginning. Like you said, Charles, like Charles, you said it has to do legwork. We know that something's coming. So when they're just walking through the market or like watching these like baby Moncalas being born, I get that's building the community, but I'm also like, but the leveler's around somewhere. Like, and I think that also might be on me for bringing that in, but we also can't quite help that. So I think that taking that part of the story in that way, I think is what kind of made that slow. Cause I think we using the word slow, you can use that in Andor as well, which all of us are loving right now.
Yeah.
But that's methodical in a different way. And it's like, I think that it's more of the fact that when it was written at its peak, it almost felt like it was a new book starting. Once the investigation, I'm like, oh, this is the book. And it also makes me wonder, because this was our first co-written book with Justina Ireland and Tessa Gratton. I'm like, how I could kind of tell at points that there were two different authors writing. And I'm like, I wonder, again, we will never know all the behind the scenes of everything, but it definitely felt like a slightly more incongruous.
It did. It felt a little bit like you remember how we had talked about some like Timothy Zahn's, original canon trilogy. That's not really a trilogy. Like with a lot, what is it? Alliances and
treason.
And treason. Yeah. That they felt like a little bit like, I don't know, like it wasn't like totally all original in some ways. You can kind of feel that sort of stifled creativity, if you dare go that far, a little bit of like, I would imagine it's probably harder for a writer to, write a book like that has a lot of other people's ideas in it, rather than, just, it's all just their own magic creativity that, kind of earned them the success that they got to write Star Wars books, So I definitely felt the same way. I think it's very analogous to like, looking at like Light of the Jedi to this book is very analogous to like episode 4 to the Phantom Menace in a lot of ways, right? Because we are kind of going backwards in time. We're starting off with a kind of maybe even boring, like compared to the State of the Galaxy type of story. I'm not saying this story was boring. I'm saying Phantom Menace, taxation and shit compared to the thrill of how episode 4 opened in the middle of a war, right? It's a little bit more of that, right? Of like, we've already learned the story. Now we're going back in time, learn some of the origins, and some of the origins are a little boring because the Jedi were just kind of doing their thing. And then suddenly this crisis happened, right? So I think that's a little bit of what happened in this book, which is risky, I think, in some ways, considering how Phantom Menace and the fans received that in general. Maybe a little bit risky to go that way, and I don't yet know if it's going to pay off. I think I will say on my own side that like I was pretty bored to the first part of the book, like as well. It took a long time to get it going, and then everything did happen at the very end. So
I think it's not 1-to-1 either, though. I think we do have to acknowledge that YA books, they are a different beast than the adult novels. And so like,
they are.
I will say actually that this felt like the most consequential YA book in the entire High Republic initiative. Like,
I would totally agree with that.
I feel like
I think that's true. Yeah. I think that's true.
There were stories from phase 1 that you didn't have to read the book. This one, I feel like moving forward, you probably needed to read. This book.
Introduced a bunch of major characters.
Exactly.
Villains and stuff, I guess, that we're building up to. So for sure.
And the thing that makes the YA books typically is that coming of age, right? And and there's typically a romance, and that was like the first 75% of this book. And for me, if I was gonna, bring something up that maybe didn't work so much for me, it's that I didn't really fully understand the connection between Kevmo and Marta. And so that's what I'm curious from you guys is, if that had been, I'm sure it worked for a lot of people out there. If it was successful for me, I think I would have enjoyed the book a lot more. Did y'all feel that connection? Did you feel that love between them? Let's say how you might have felt it, from a book like Lost Stars, where I personally think it was very successful.
I have mixed feelings on it.
My easiest answer is not really. I think that I was like, I love romance in my Star Wars books. I think it's, all memes and silly feelings aside. Like, I think it's actually really nice. Like, I love Princess and the Scoundrel. I thought, I thought that worked very well. I think there has been romance, like the Elzar, Stellan, Avar question stuff in phase 1. Like, I think you can do it very well. Lula and Zine in the High Republic Adventures. Like, I think we've seen very effective relationships, and for some reason, in this book, I was reading all of them, right? Like Charles, you have some great quotes here in the outline. The one from page 200 where it's like he just liked Marta so much, the way she was kind and challenged him, so pretty and thoughtful, then turned around and did something that seemed impulsive, like she was following the will of the Force. When he was with her, Kevmo wondered if Marta and the Path did have special insight into living in harmony and clarity with the Force. Like the way he looks at her, and it is written, is actually very like correct. I guess I'm like, yeah, that's what you would do. And for some reason, I just didn't get that extra level of, oh my gosh, like I hope these kids get together. Honestly, until the end, when she held him at the end, I was like, oh my god, they love each other. But it came out of nowhere for me.
Yeah.
It did for me too.
She's just like, what do you mean you're not allowed to have a relationship? That's stupid. I mean, that's all about what the Force is. It's about relationships and about love and about sharing things. And he's like, no, that's not what they taught me.
I know.
So the poor guy was questioning it right before he died. Spoiler alert.
He was. Yeah.
Oops.
That's a way to put it. I think it was a little bit of like Kevmo didn't really seem to struggle with that at all. That wasn't like a key part of his character like beforehand. So like to introduce it, like, he really didn't seem like it was like a struggle. Like I feel like if you're gonna make the Jedi romance thing work, like it either has to be like they totally just fall head over heels, like in
Stars?
Anakin Skywalker.
No. What's the book with the guy from the Phantom Menace? The book with what am I trying to say?
Star Wars Brotherhood with Anakin Skywalker.
Oh Jesus! The one with Ventress. What's the book with Ventress?
Oh,
the
Dark
famous
Disciple.
one.
Quinlan
Dark
Voss.
Disciple.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
Quinlan
Quinlan Voss.
Oh
Good
my
Lord,
gosh,
man,
Quinlan
I stumbled
Voss.
over that one. Jesus, Quinlan Voss. Quinlan Voss was just like, he was just into it. It was like not a lot of like struggle, you know. He just kind of like gave into the passion. We didn't really see that. He was just like, no, I'm good initially, a little bit, right? Like kind of how it felt to some degree.
Also with gold face tattoos. Interestingly
That's right.
enough.
Yeah,
man. That's very true. That's very true. So I don't know. I think it's always risky to do the Jedi romance thing because it's such a key part of their culture. It's a really fun one to explore, especially in a young adult book. And I thought it felt a little bit, I don't know, a little bit sudden in some ways. Like I don't know. That sometimes happens in young adult books too, though, right? Like where it's like nothing is there, and then suddenly it's all passion. I will say that was written well. The passion parts were written pretty well. Not pretty well. They were written really well. Those were believable. Like it felt like they were really into each other during those moments. But like I think the build up to that a little bit was delayed.
Yeah. I frankly liked the relationship between Yana and her girlfriend way more. I thought that they were an extremely believable couple, and then when she passed at the end, that's when I wrote in my notes like, oh wait, I think I do care about these characters, because that's when I actually felt the first part of emotion about this book, was when her girlfriend died, and I was like, oh, okay, great. So that kind of, and that's when again the action starts ramping up, like as we talk about. But so it was weird. I was like, I think I kind of want to read a book more about them, because that feels way more conflicted. Of like, you're in a cult. I want to leave this cult. Come with me. But my father's here. That's a book. You know? Core. Thank you. Yeah, Yana and Core. I loved them. And I'm like, it's like when the camera kept going over to Kevin, I'm like, no, look over here. This is cool.
It's another one of those points that's like, this is just straight assumption on our parts. We don't know a damn thing about how these projects are come together. It's not an assumption of mine of like, it feels like that is one of those things that felt kind of cornered a little bit. Like it felt like the creativity was a little stifled there, because I feel like the Yana and Core stuff was like you say, it was all very good, and you kind of want it to, you know, get back to that stuff. So but the character's death doesn't have value if you don't add this type of stuff back in. So I kind of felt like some of those decisions feel a little shoehorned in some ways, which I don't know if that's just how writing works, if that's how it happens when it's a multiple author project, if that's how High Republic stuff works, it is such a collaborative thing. I don't really know. I'm talking out of my ass here. I have no idea why it is. maybe it was all intentionally written this way, and I'm just an idiot. I mean, that's also very much possible as well. So, but
we do have what, eight other books in phase 2 that we have to read.
Yeah.
3
Since
every
the beginning.
Yeah.
kind of related to this a little bit, if you guys don't mind. I'd love to steer the conversation a little bit about the biggest kind of concept that was a big part of this book was this whole religious cult thing that was like huge. I mean, that was like, this book was like the Handmaid's Tale Star Wars edition, with, for the first 80% of the book, right? And I will say this was a bit of a turnoff for me, straight up. I have a lot of personal religious trauma, if you want to go there, and so I found it a little bit triggering to some degree.
Sure,
and it was supposed to, and I think that is a testament to the fact that the culty stuff was written really, really well. In this book, it was written really, really well, and almost to the point I was thinking about this a lot because we've seen culty stuff in other Star Wars books before. The one that came to mind the most is from the AC Crispin Han Solo, the Jedi Order, the AC Crispin Han Solo trilogy. There's this whole culty thing that's going on in that book too, right? And
the sex rhinos.
Yeah, the sex rhinos. That's right. And if you guys haven't read
Talanda too,
I know, you probably would. If if you have not read that, just to give you a little bit of context without major spoilers, like there's some culty stuff that happens in this book where all these people are kind of tricked into this religious experience that's not real, and that they're all kind of like involved in the spice trade, right? Is the short version. And I felt like in those books, it's been a long time since I've read them, but I feel like in those books, like all the kind of bad stuff that the cult is up to is a little more in your face. It's a little more obvious, and we're seeing that through the lens of Han Solo, who has a incredible bullshit radar, right?
Right.
So so we're seeing it through the lens of Han Solo, in which he's like, yeah, this is ridiculous from the start. Whereas this, it's like, even as the reader, you're kind of strung along for a long time of like, is this group kind of up to no good? And we slowly learn through the course of Yana and Kor's story that, yeah, they're doing some real shady shit when they go off planet, right? So I thought that was written really, really well. And to see this through the lens of Marta, which is how this book differs, right? Through the lens of Marta, we get to see that everything is all sunshine and daisies. And I found Marta's character to be incredibly frustrating for me and incredibly triggering for me, because she's so into the true religion, that like, that like she just kind of like spews all this crazy nonsense that she obviously doesn't know anything about, when compared to the Jedi. And we as the reader know all about the Jedi and know about their mastery of the Force and know that they're kind of right about the Force, and what Marta says is kind of crazy. So, what did you guys think about the religious cult stuff? Like, what were your initial gut reactions to the heaviness of this? It was very heavy handed, I felt like.
When I listened to it, I feel like they had a point. It is believable if you listen, if you hear what they say. Like, the Force is amongst everything. If you use the Force, then you're using that life force and something else is suffering. I mean, it makes sense the way that they put it out and the examples that they used. So I could see it in that point of view. And that's where those 2 points of view that I was talking about earlier were conflicting. When Marta was talking about that to Kevmo, and Kevmo was like, no, that's not how it works. We use the Force and we give it back, and that's how this whole thing works in tandem together. And she's just like, no. You're hurting something when you manipulate the Force that way. And so it's believable to me. So
that's fair.
Get Wes a robe. That's what he just said.
I know.
Well, I love that you brought it up, Corey, because that was one of the things that I really took out of this. And Wes, you nailed it, because I also wrote, can we understand where the path is coming from? And I think by the end, obviously, we get to the point of, okay, they are using this rhetoric, which maybe they believed at the beginning, to now steal artifacts, to now get power over the galaxy, and now you're going to destroy everything that doesn't agree with you, which is how
to get rods
cults work.
To be
to get the rods. Exactly.
That's right.
So I think one of the issues with that, obviously at the end we know, settle down, you. At the end of the book, I think we obviously understand this is the end of the cult story. All cults are bad. That's where books go.
It is.
But I agree that at the beginning, Charles put in some quotes in the outline here that I really liked, including on page 160. Kevmo's thinking about them, and he says, "Gifts freely given," he thought, which is like one of their catchphrases. And then he silently laughed at himself. Was he really beginning to consider that the teachings of the path might have merit? Absolutely not. He was a Jedi and he knew the Force, but there was something nice about giving of oneself without the expectation of something in return. It was, at its heart, the hallmark of the Jedi. And I like that a lot, because at this point in time, the Jedi are at their golden age, right? That's the whole pitch of the High Republic. This is the Jedi at their power. Everyone trusts the Jedi. We love that. Whereas by the time we get to Phantom Menace and things like that, they're kind of been corrupted a bit. They are a little more of a cult status and things like that. The way Seeker idea is out the window. You have to stay in the temple and do the dogma of the Jedi. I like him being faced with it actively and actually considering it and then realizing, no, this isn't right, and then being proven right at the end. And I think that's really key. But while I agree, Corey, Marta is very frustrating in this book because of the fact that she can't quite see through the dogma that we as readers can and that Yana has seen through.
Right.
At the end of it, as a story, why, like Charles, I am now really, really hyped for the continuation of this, even if some things in this current one didn't work for me. I saw Marta doubling down on being kind of a zealot, being like, you know what?
Yeah.
It's like when you hear about Scientology, when even people think about that it might be wrong, sometimes you just gotta double down and be like, you know what? I'm in it now, whether it's for power, whether it's for belief, I don't care. She's ascended beyond that. So even if the Path did have a great idea, because hey, we hate the Sith for abusing the Force, right? You're turning the Force against its will to do your own thing. The Jedi kind of do that in a little way.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter at this point. Now it's about power and revenge. And I like that evolution of the cult.
Yeah.
Not so much about power.
Oh my God, the robe.
Family,
Is Wes
Is
in
that
a
a Snuggie?
No,
It's
like
a robe,
It's
baby.
a robe, dude. It's a robe.
It's a robe.
This is
looks like a
It's
looks like a Catholic priest robe, dude. What is that? Are you in a cult, Wes?
That's exactly what it is. I was a priest on Saturday for a murder mystery dinner.
Oh my God.
I was
Oh
wondering
my
why
God.
Wes disappeared, and turned out he went to get his priest robe. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I mean, bad people can have good ideas, right?
Right.
It doesn't mean all their ideas are good. Like, you know, the Path talking about gifts freely given. Cool. Yeah, I'm with that. I'm on board with that. You
I like
start
free stuff.
hatching demon
Freely
dog
give.
ghosts out of jewels and turning people into stone pillars. I'm less all about that. Like I'm gonna be on my way. So
We don't love it.
Yeah. But the Marta thing in particular, I think it was important to focus so much on her and her reaction to these things, because she is like as far as you could go into this cult, basically.
Yeah,
like
for
at
sure.
the end of this book, the moment that really made me pull back and be like, how is this still happening, is when she left Kevmo when he was killed.
Mhm.
And I thought she was walking into that chamber and we were going to have a 180 where Yana was going to stay with the cult and Marta was going to try to kill the mother. And, you know, we were going to see that kind of flip.
Oh, yeah.
But then she got in there and she was like, oh, cool. Yeah, no doubt. We got the leveler now.
Right.
Like, it's like, yo, Kevmo's still dead, man. Like, so that really pulled me out, but it also did show like that's how far into this thing she is.
Yeah.
But
But maybe-
it was laid out really well. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say maybe in a weirdly, I don't know, I want to get your thoughts on this. Maybe in like a weirdly not super toxic way. Like, well, she's got the lightsaber, which is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Right? Like the lightsaber is almost like symbolic that like maybe the cult isn't like, you know, all the right way. You know what I mean? Like maybe there is a little bit more to this thing. I feel like it's a symbol to some ways of
for
like,
sure
well,
it is.
she's
Also,
holding
it's-
on to like the Jedi stuff. Maybe
It's a
little
gold lightsaber, right?
It is.
Right,
It's
Kevmo's
a
is gold.
lightsaber.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which also that image of her holding a gold lightsaber is a direct visual parallel to her descendant Markion holding Loden's gold lightsaber in Phase
bit. Oh
1.
my god.
So like,
Well, and I was gonna bring this up at one point or another. On page 328, we get the quote where she accepts her position as the guide, and she's still holding the lightsaber. And here's the quote: it says, "Marta nodded at the elders. She bowed to them, hands out, lightsaber in one, the other in open palm." And so it was such great imagery there, because the path was always their symbol was two open palms, and now one of them is closed around this weapon, and you can see that's the
right.
trajectory of the cult.
Sure.
yes.
So it's just totally changed.
Yeah, and on that, can we take this and talk just for a little bit about the ultimate weapon, which is the leveler, right?
Yeah.
We've now
Yeah.
we've seen this in so many forms in the High Republic. We started out with the shadowy beast in Rising Storm, right? This
Invisible,
idea
almost,
of
like
fear.
Predator.
Yes, exactly. And then we go to it. It was drawn for the first time in the Trail of Shadows comic. We saw it, and now we get to see it literally born from an egg that then evolves and now grows into this death dealer
disgusting
thing.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. Because it's so disgusting, let's read about the description. On page 296, it reads as follows. The thing clung to the Soikin's arm, and the Jedi drew back in revulsion. Yana watched as the strange grayscale extended over her body. It spread slowly at first before increasing its pace. The woman's pale silvery skin was replaced with something akin to the stone that made up the walls of the caverns, and the sounds of fear, revulsion, and pain that came from her cut through Yana like a vibroblade. What was that thing? Had the mother known that she was incubating such a creature? So, like, it is just
Critter.
it's Critter. Get it. What do you guys think about now this thing that was an idea and is now like a biological being? We see it. We've seen it now grow. It grows in the book, and now it can be controlled like a pet. That is now the symbol for its expanding cult. Like, we thought the Nile were the big bad, maybe the Drengir. Now it is clear the Leveler is the thing for the High Republic as a whole. Where are we on this?
I'm a big fan of this, honestly. I
Me
thought it
too.
was done really, really well. Like it was real creepy and real scary, which is what they needed to do with this.
Yeah.
If it
Yes,
was
happy
just
Halloween.
if it was yeah, exactly. If this was lion in a cage scenario and they're gonna unleash the beast, and without all this weird creepy, the mother is its caretaker, right? Like, what kind of name is the mother? And she's like speaking into the orb the whole time, right? And like it's very witchy and creepy and scary, and they continue to get this stuff really right. Like, it's really hard to capture this sort of like existential dread, like sensation, because they don't really just feel like straight up pain or anything like that. They feel this crazy haunting lingering
Like
death
emptiness.
sensation.
Yeah.
Right. And they get that right, man. Like, it's so scary every time.
What scares the Jedi was the question at the beginning of the High Republic. They talk about that in the Art of the High Republic book, but that was like what I believe Kevin Scott was the one on the retreat that said, like, that's the thing. What scares the Jedi? That's the whole purpose of the High. And I'm like, you know what? It's this thing.
It's critters. It's critters from orbs.
We really only got like we didn't really get the beginning. We may have got like the middle, maybe, because they said that, this thing, this egg, it can open up and hatch, if you will, and turn into the Leveler. Well, then Sunshine's like, well, I know where we can find more of these. And I was like,
how about that? We just glossed right over that too, right? That just happened real fast in the book. I'm glad you guys caught that. What's that all about, man? Are we gonna go to the Orby planet? Is that what we're gonna do?
Tell me this: is
Why
the
does he
jewel
know?
on Andor? Is that something? Is that a Leveler?
No.
God, no.
No.
You don't know. You
but
don't
he
know
does-
until it doesn't hatch. All right, go ahead.
He does say that those jewels, just like the one that he brought to the mother, he says they litter the landscape, and it would be no hardship to raise an army of levelers to spread the love of the path. Not where I was expecting the end of the sentence to go, but
The love of the
love.
I forgot about that.
this is what
we
the
will make
Beatles
them love
wanted.
us by force.
Yeah.
That's
No,
cults.
but if one leveler or one nameless does this, right? I mean, it does make you look ahead to phase 3, because there might be more coming, or like even more than we've even seen. We do know there's more than just the leveler, but there might be even more. There might be an actual army. And what scared me about this one in particular is that it did kind of change what it did to people. I mean, it still more or less incapacitated them, cut them off from the force, all that stuff, but they were like stone instead of a corn husk, I guess.
Yep.
And and it didn't need to like stay on top of you and do this to you. Like, it touched Kevmo and then he ran.
Yeah.
And then he still turned to stone, which
Like
is
a delayed
pretty
effect.
wild.
Well, we have
Yeah.
so in phase 1, we get the leveler kind of like turns you into a husk, kind of a gas, right? We have the phase 2 where it turns you to stone. Is phase 3 going to be like it turns you into a liquid, just so we get all the different forms?
Like a vapor.
All right.
You melt like the Wicked Witch of the West, like yeah.
I hope so. So Stephanie Mack brings up a great point in the chat. I think you were on before we get off there. there is a leveler army, because in Eye of the Storm, the comic, which I know you mentioned in your notes here, Charles, we get notes about the Evereni, which I want to hit on, but we also do see a lot of leveler nameless ones starting to breed, and it is an idea that they are coming, as Gandalf would say.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because as we mentioned, like, this book had a lot of legwork to do, a lot of things to explain. And I'm curious, did you guys feel like it explained those things well? Because there's so many questions, right? Like, we needed to learn more about the Evereni and about Markian Rose lineage. We needed to learn more about the leveler and the nameless. We needed to learn about the rod that Markian's been using to control the leveler. Like, there were so many questions. Did this book answer more questions than it asked? Because for me, while it, Wes, you said it felt like a middle chapter. And in that respect, I definitely agree with you, because, like, did it answer a question? Yeah, but it asked another one on top of it. So, like, oh, where'd the leveler come from? Oh, from this jewel. And I'm like, oh, cool. All right, thanks. Wait, what? Where did the jewel come? Like, what?
Exactly.
So there's just so many more questions.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, it's the planet. It's on the planet with all the orbs.
The secret planet that this random guy named Sunshine is the only one who knows about. Yeah.
Also, can we talk about Sunshine for a second? Like, you guys, we all knew that guy was scum as soon as we met him, right? We named him like Sunshine. Like, come on,
for sure,
dude. So cold killer for sure.
Yeah. I think it answered. I think it was about in equal parts for me, Charles. I think that it answered, number one, where did the Nile basically come from, and from that we're like, cool. We've seen a row. We've seen Martyr.
A dumb cult on some nowhere planet.
Right. We've seen the Gaze Electric. We've seen the using the stripes to do the Force. Now we assume those are going to turn into the Nile symbol. Like, so, like, it answered a lot of that. Great. What about the leveler? How does that thing even exist? Is it an organic being? Great. We've literally now seen it hatch. We now understand that. How is Markian Rowe exempt from it? How's he controlling it? Great. Now we've seen the device that controls it. Like, so it answered a lot of those. But then,
like, what are the rods? Like, why does that control that
Force
thing?
artifact?
Listen, they are infinity. They are infinity stones. You cannot convince me otherwise, because there's multiple colors now. What was the main one from phase one? Was it purple or was it?
Yeah, it's purple.
Red?
That's the one that Marta. That's one that Yana has right now. Yeah, I think that's the one. That's the one that Yana has. Yeah, and there's one on Jeddah where there's going to be a battle next year. Just saying.
Yeah, that's Daybreak, I think. And then the Hynestian royal family, I think, had the other.
Stole one from. Yeah. Is that an important name, by the way? Hynestian. Do we know who that is?
It's been mentioned before, I believe, in phase one at times.
It reminds me a little bit of the what is it in? This is deep legends pool here. What is it? What is Jason Solo's daughter from? Remember, he was like into the queen of the, starts with an H. Hylian? No, that's Legend of Zelda. I don't know. Jared is in the chat. He can tell us. Anyway, there's an H royalty. It starts with an H royalty from Legends, and I can't remember what the name it is. But anyway, I wonder if it was similar to that. Hosnian Prime was dropped in this book too. I heard that name dropped.
Sure was.
I can't remember what.
Hapes or Hapies.
Hapian. Yeah, the Hapies cluster. That's it. Those people. The Hapies consortium.
That's just something that, like, somebody has to go check with you or Charles about, because they had a crazy night in New Orleans.
You need some Valtrex for that.
Jared says pronounced Hapies. Hapies. The Hapies consortium. That's what it was, if I remember correctly.
But I will say, I think that at the end of the day, though, all the questions that it asked, I wasn't frustrated that I didn't get answers in this book, because I think that as I'm a High Republic reader, I know that there's another book coming. Now, is that fair for a book to make that happen? I don't know. When you read a book, it's part of a series, you know you're not going to get all the answers in one book, and you know it's going to make you go to the next one. That's any trilogy series for forever. So I think because of how good the end was and how interested I am in those questions, it's a success. But I can absolutely understand if some people read this book and are like, I feel like I know less than I did when I started, and I don't like that. And I think I'll be interested to come back around to this question next May or June once we've read Cavan's Path of Vengeance that closes it out.
Yeah. I will say, too, that it did, while it didn't necessarily give a concrete answer to every question, it did some more subtle things that I thought were cool. Like, at the end of the book, when you see everyone back on the Gaze Electric and you see the kind of power shifting amongst the cult, whereas at first it was basically just the mother, maybe the herald still had some sway, and then it became like, okay, it's still the mother, but now there's like the guide and the champion, which is Marta and Yana, and they're kind of up there with the mother, and the herald's still floating around and trying to get them to help him kill the mother. And it felt very much like the structure of the Nile when we met them in Light of the Jedi. It felt like, oh, they're almost like Tempest runners, and the mother is almost like the eye. And like you could see the seeds of that kind of being sown, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, and they're all ready to kill each other at a moment's notice now. Like, we've gone from how can we all give gifts freely given and make sure there's children to like, okay, I'm gonna kill her soon, but not yet because I need to get this thing. And then
blade between the ribs.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's again, the ending just sets up so many freaking cool things, and I think that the end of that, like, it's so odd because it really is a tale of two stories. There is the interpersonal connections of Yana and Kor, Kevmo and Marta, Marta and Yana, the Herald and Kor, Marta and the mother. Like, I want to be a child. And at the end, it all kind of gets washed away to be like, cool, these universe-destroying beasts are coming and everyone might kill each other. The Jedi gotta be worried. And it's like, whoa! It's such a 180 that ends on this cool thing. And I think that all those questions are really interesting. And I think they're really interesting and ends in such a cool place. And all those earlier questions kind of just fade by the wayside for me.
What is up with the names? The last name Rowe, or the last, like, for a lot of them. So there's Marta Rowe, Markion Rowe. What is that?
They're related.
Yeah, I mean,
literally. Yeah, we know that. We know that for sure. Like, he is. He's literally a descendant. Yeah.
Okay.
I was curious, is that his like
grandmother?
Because we don't know how long they live. I was like, is that your grandma? Is that your great grandma?
Papa.
But then I went back and looked in the Eye of the Storm comic, and you see Asgard talking to his mother, and he calls her something that starts with an S. I went back and looked today to see, oh crap, was that like Marta? But it wasn't. So she's at least a couple generations up. Yeah.
Yeah. But we talk about the Evereni a little bit, because we talked about in Eye of the Storm. It's really great because that's when the Evereni are dropped. That's the race of folks that Markion comes from. It was all hush hush in phase 1, and in this book we learned that at this point in history, the Evereni have a very bad reputation. Right, like Yana and Marta are kind of distrusted wherever they go just by default. They have like pointed teeth, but no matter what they do, they're thought of as cunning, kind of backstabby people. Like, what'd you guys think of getting more of that? And with the way that Yana and Marta talk to each other, did you get the vibe that, like, I don't know, are people right about the Evereni? Like, at the end of the day, they do kind of kill some people, but what was it like kind of seeing a little interplay between them?
Well, I did think that the humans were weak, so that's one thing that I pulled out of this book.
They're not wrong, though.
They said the humans are weak, we're much stronger, and then we can break them like a twig. And so that was, and she did.
Truth.
There was a scene where she just, like, she heard shouting and immediately ran by and snapped Sam, poor guy's neck, and then just kept on going. And I was like, holy crap, the Evereni are badasses. And so I'm just
that was cold.
I'm trying to find a good picture of them, but a lot of them, they don't have their mouths showing. I want to see their teeth. But
I know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone has good and bad qualities, and it's just kind of what gets fostered, you know? And and if you live your whole life and everyone tells you, like, no, you are bad, like, you are bad, you're bad, it's probably a higher chance you're going to end up becoming a bad person. And I mean, I think Marta was case in point for that. But I think it also speaks towards how did Markion come about? Because he's almost even the next level. Like, that dude is evil incarnate. Like, he is just dark.
Oh man,
and that's
I got daddy issues, man. Asgard.
Well, yeah, that's definitely
Awful
part
dad.
of it. But like, I think that if you can't find your place, like, in the galaxy, in the entire galaxy, because these people are going planet to planet and they're hated everywhere. Eventually, you're gonna make your own place, and it just happened to be the Gaze Electric, and it happened to be the Nile, and everything that flowed from that was really a culmination of the hatred that they took in. You know, they just kind of projected it back out to the rest of the galaxy.
Which brings me to the one thing that we have not somehow touched on yet, but I think it might actually be the biggest takeaway from this book going forward, which is you talk about finding a community, finding other people, you know, growing and expanding. Marta's whole goal at the end of this book is based around wanting to go to Jeddah. And we hear so much in this book about Jeddah, about the fact that there is a conclave of religions and vast amounts of people. And we, of course, know in this initiative, we're going to the Battle of Jeddah next year. We know that's the title. The High Republic comic relaunched with a new #1 issue that takes place on Jeddah. And I think that when they were talking about, Path of the Sea, it's going to be really important going forward. Obviously, the stuff with the Leveler is key. Obviously, we get Marta Rowe. But I personally think that everything we got seeded about Jeddah and about its importance and about now the vibe of the Path of the Open Hand towards the people of Jeddah is going to be freaking huge going forward, isn't it?
I don't know yet. I think it's a very interesting question. They've tried to make Jeddah important multiple times in Star Wars canon so far, but they've never made it a key story point. You know what I mean? Like we had the Battle of Jeddah in canon. It was called the Battle of Jeddah, right? I think it was.
Battle of Jeddah? Yes.
In what?
It's called the Battle in canon in
the Battle of Jeddah,
before the Force Awakens. Yeah, it's called the Battle of Jeddah. Like the last no, that's not Jeddah.
That's that's Jakku.
It's Jakku that we're thinking of, Wes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm like, you mean Rogue One? That wasn't a battle. That was a massacre.
I was like, wait a minute. Wait, that was, you're right. That I was the whole. I've not even realized this. The whole time I read this book, I was thinking about why do they keep talking about the Battle of
Why
Jeddah?
does everyone go back to Jakku?
We've already had that. No, that was Jakku. Oh, idiot. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Well, the Battle of Jeddah is the audio drama, right?
Yeah, that is coming out later. There will be a Battle of Jeddah. Okay. But I think you're right. It's going to be the setting for this phase or a lot of this phase going forward.
I'm excited to see Jeddah like in its prime because it feels like we have like tried to talk about Jeddah about it in its prime a lot in several different books. And after Rogue One, we had that one little short book. I can't remember what it's called.
Guardians of the
Wills. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Guardians of the Wills. It kind of highlights a little bit of that. And I'm excited to finally see it. I hope it is epic.
Yeah,
it kind of feels like it's gonna be.
Yeah, because we're starting to see in the comic that again Cavan's writing again as he did with the first one. I know a lot of folks wait on the collections for those, but the first issue has been out, and we get to see visually Jeddah in its prime now, and we get to see like all these different groups and religions and stuff. And I'm fascinated now by. Marta talks so much about wanting to go there, and she's like, this is such a clear path. Like, we will be legitimized, and we will be able to share our views of the Force with everybody. How great. And at the end of the book, you realize, like, why the mother never wanted to go there, because the mother's never been interested in actually converting people to their ideas. It's clearly been so much about power, and to watch Marta, I think, slowly begin to realize that now as the guide is kind of chilling, because that's kind of how idealism falters, right? It's people get into these great groups and they're like, oh, we just want to share peace and share ideals. Wouldn't it be great if we went to this great unified place and shared our ideals? And they're like, no, child, that is not what this is about, you idiot. Yeah, we're probably going to attack these people very viciously.
I'm glad you brought up the mother, because she's something that we've not talked about too much, and I think we should talk about her.
Force.
Yeah, I mean, who is she, and what are the abilities that she actually has? Because the Path thinks that she has Force visions, which maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. She did seem to have an understanding of Force artifacts. She knew the jewel was very important as soon as she saw it. There are kind of a lot of things like that, and there's a quote from right towards the end of the book where she kind of slips, and rather than saying like, "Oh yeah, this is the will of the Force," she says, "I do not want the path on Jeddah at this time." And Marta's thinking about it, and it says the words "Ray" in Marta's skull. I do not want. I do not. Not the Force. Marta frowned. She'd never heard the mother express her own needs in such a way. It was always the Force's needs, the will of the Force. So obviously she's got her own agenda. I don't think any of us doubted that, but like, what is she? What is it? What is she accomplishing? And how does she do the things that she's doing?
Well, fun fact. The mother's, we find out her name's Alicia in the book.
And you're going to bring up her last name in the
You better believe
comics.
I will.
What are Easter eggs for, Eric? What are they
because
for?
I think that's important now.
It is important. No, say this. Yeah. I learned this today. It's really interesting.
So we find out that in a character reveal trailer from Star Wars, her full name is Alicia Zeveron. That's her name. She's known as the Mother. In the High Republic #1, in the secondary story, we find a Jedi Knight named Olivia Zeveron.
Right.
There are no coincidences in Star Wars, right? So there is a Jedi Knight, not Padawan, a full Jedi Knight with the same last name as the Mother. So a lot of people have speculated or, come to the logical conclusion that this is likely the biological daughter of the mother. And if you have a child that in your mind is maybe stolen by the Jedi or is maybe leaves your cult to go study with the Jedi, I think that could make me a little bit of an extremist. I think that there is a very large chance.
That's your red line in the sand, Eric.
That's it. Yeah, I mean,
right there.
If someone took Morden away from me, I'd be like, time to burn it down.
I would get definite tunnel vision and just I've been in that place before, and I was thinking about that on the way home listening to this book. Actually, I was just like, I would be exactly in her shoes. I would want to march through there, and I don't care what happened to me after the end. Somebody's gonna get their ass beat, or somebody's gonna die, and I don't care what's happening afterwards. I'm gonna feel good about it while it's happening.
Yeah, and it's such a huge, weird. So Charles, you found that out today as you're doing Easter eggs. What did you think when they hit that? Because that was like a wild revelation.
Well, my kind of thought when we were going through the book is that the mother makes it seem as if she has these abilities that she doesn't have, right?
Yeah.
Because she was working with Sunshine and no one knew that, and I think Trees made a comment about how she might be getting hyperspace pass from prospectors and stuff like that. So I thought it was all smoke and mirrors type things, but then she did have that power over Sunshine that seemed to be more so than she has a nice smile, right? There was a quote where on page 193, and Sunshine says, "This space where Alicia was felt like home, like a place where he could put down roots and be the kind of person he'd always wanted to be, faithful, honest, trustworthy." And it wasn't that he wanted anything romantic with the mother. No, she was too good for him, and he knew that. But to be at her beck and call, what could be better than that? After all, the Force must be free, and she was the only one who could do that. He was lucky to know her. Sunshine stumbled a bit at the thought and frowned. Where did that come from? He didn't care about the Force one way or the other. A rush of annoyance surged through him. The mother's eyes opened, and she gave Sunshine a warm smile. "You've returned home. Welcome." The vexing feeling evaporated, and Sunshine returned the smile. So she's doing something, man, whether it's using the Force overtly or is it a passive thing?
She's vibrating her throat gills at a certain.
Is it pheromones again? Are we back to pheromones?
Yeah.
That was a
line to Till. I got you.
Reference.
But yeah, there's definitely something with that. And I think if her daughter has Force abilities that she's using as a Jedi Knight, it makes sense that she may have Force abilities. Now that gets to the question, then why doesn't the leveler attack her? There's so many questions about her that I definitely think will be answered.
How did she end up with the leveler again? Did Sunshine bring it to her?
Yeah.
He
that
had
world.
Okay,
He just
all
gave
right,
that
all right.
world.
the very beginning.
Just gave it to
in the
her?
very
That's like a
beginning.
gift.
He
He
came
didn't
by.
say. Yeah, but he didn't say how he got it, though, right?
No. He said he found it on a far off world, right?
He said he has a secret world that only he knows about. That's why he killed Alonzo Santecas, because he was worried that this path that he had was leading to his secret world. But we don't know how he found that world.
Okay,
yeah, and I will say, as a little preview for you folks, Sunshine Dobbs has a very brief mention in George Mann's Quest for the Hidden City, and there is talk about worlds that they've been to and prospectors finding. So this is definitely a time where way more of hyperspace is not mapped. Whereas the prospectors have a lot of secrets. And I think that this is, again, he probably, I believe, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of this book, came with the intention to sell this essentially to the mother as a find. But then because of her effect on him, he's like, "Oh my God, have it. This is for you. Now I will do whatever you command me." And I think that's an interesting.
Because that happened so early in the book, how did that come across? So he handed it over as "I will, if I give this to you for free, would you allow me to be your your helper and go find more of these artifacts?" But he's working for her now for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Basically.
Yeah.
Because of her influence.
Also, she only used her magic powers on him the whole book too, right? So
I think it worked
potentially
on the cult too.
Yeah, did that? I think that was in the background. That kind of worked on Marta when she was she felt that whenever she saw her, she's like, "Oh my God, the mother!" Before you kind of see through the gaze a little bit, she does seem to have this aura of something.
Maybe. But also that the main guy, the main cult leader guy, whatever his name is,
the Herald.
Yeah, the Herald. Yeah, his
Herald.
name is Herald.
His name's Herald.
Oh, Harry.
Herald.
Yeah.
Herald or Harold for short.
Yeah. Harold is apparently immune to it. Old Harry, he's immune to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which ironically, his version of hair has been cut off.
Yeah, it's some rough past. Yeah, I think that
that's
she's
true.
definitely got something going there, and I think that Star Wars has never shied away from a good old parent-child big confrontation, right?
Yeah,
So,
She's
I
a
mean,
witch.
there was an interesting quote where Kevmo and Zala were thinking about the fact that they had yet to see the mother, and there was like one
Right.
line, and Kevmo was like, they had talked about it and figured it must be because when they saw her, they would either A, recognize her, or two, figure something. A or two. I sound like, what is that?
you did great.
Number B.
No, that is straight out of Home Alone.
You
That's
got
something that
two
Buzz
choices.
does. No, but A, they would either recognize her, or B, they would know something about her. And we got the scene where they confronted the mother from someone else's point of view. We got it from Yana's point of view. And so I was curious.
Right,
We don't
right.
know that they didn't recognize her. We just know that a fight
That's
kind of
true.
broke out pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
she could even have been a Jedi at one point and left the order. We
shit.
don't know.
I like
Yeah.
that theory. That's fun.
Oh,
lot of-
this is the
and-
middle
and-
chapter, Charles. You're right. There's so much
Yeah.
more that we haven't learned
Yeah.
yet.
Well,
Even
and
though
that's
it's-
what's so cool. There's so many possibilities out of this
Yeah.
book, and I think that's what the High Republic is doing on such a great level that it did in Phase 1. Is that because there's so much content, even if you don't read all of it, there's all these strings you can still pull and have ideas about, and it's kind of again more of like looking in a history almost than even just doing narrative stories, which some people are going to find annoying. Some people are absolutely going to love. Like if you're doing deep dive podcasts all the time, it's pretty helpful to have all this information.
Do you think the mother is the key architect here? Are we going to see? Is she going to be the big bad? You think, or are they?
She's a red herring.
They're alluding a little bit to the fact that Marta is turning out
Oh,
to
yeah,
be a true zealot. You think she's going to
Knife
be the?
in back. There's no way the
Oh,
mother survives
man.
like halfway through Kevin's book.
All
There's
right, that's
no
fair.
way.
Yeah, Kevin is good at killing people, so you know.
Yeah.
So she's
think
getting
the
her
High
orders from
Republic's
somebody
good.
else.
Yeah.
Thinking, interesting.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, well, honestly, I think if you're controlling what we're going to learn is if you're controlling the leveler, you are the big bad. You are
Yeah.
the threat because you now have the thing that can destroy the Jedi. But also they have to destroy the Jedi in a way that it doesn't become as threatening as it does during Phase 1 because then we have nowhere to go during Phase 3. So again, I have full faith in they've planned this out. They know why they're doing this. So I think by the end of the phase, we'll see exactly why the leveler had to evolve this way in front of us, why the Path of the Open Hand had to evolve into the Nile. So by the time we get to Phase 3, we're not still thinking about lingering questions from this phase. Again, we're one book in out of 6. So
So
I think we got a lot of time.
Each holder of the rod can basically like manage or be over the nameless. I remember that was a great whole last chapter, by the way, of the book. How and they basically named them the nameless, but not actually doing it in words. But like if you're a holder of the rod, then you control the leveler, right? So there's 3 of them.
yeah.
We only got Apparently we only got one. I don't know
He
the other
who
2 are.
holds the rod. It's like I think it's funny that she's that Yana's like carrying it around now, like a steak that's hidden in your pocket from like
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo. You know what I mean?
Oh my
Like,
God, that's
the only reason
exactly it.
The only reason he falls around is because he's got a bag of treats. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's
Scooby-Doo
it.
Oh, you were
That's
chosen.
sad.
Yeah,
Scooby-Doo
sure
was.
was. Chosen
I
by the
know.
Force. Yep, that's me.
Smells like
know.
bacon.
Why did nobody notice the thing is missing though? Isn't it kind of important? It seems like it's kind of important, right? Like the
This
mother
feels
just
like a
fine
cult
with it.
where they don't ask too many questions.
Yeah, but the mother should have whoever's
Well,
one
the
of the
mother
artifacts,
does know.
like, yeah.
She knows.
Oh.
She does. That's why she has
she
Sunshine to
sends
get the other one.
Sunshine, yeah, to get the Rod of Daybreak, because she, I assume, is going to try to use that instead.
And if she asks, "Hey, give me that back," I think Yano would be like, "Cool, leveler, kill her."
She's gonna be like,
You know?
no, I have this rod. So he just like stops in the middle between 2 of them. He can't go anywhere because
I
they
know.
both have a rod.
It's like that.
I
It's
just-
like the TikTok challenge where like the 2 people like run in opposite directions to see
Yeah,
which one the
yeah.
dog goes to. It's
Yep.
like that.
I was gonna say it's like Air Bud. It's like which rod is the pudding cup, the snack pack that the dog will go to.
Jeez.
One of them's a rolled up newspaper and one's a pudding cup.
Airbud.
And that's what the book is about. Well
Yeah.
done, everybody. We made it. Airbud
And
the book.
scene.
The High Republic, Airbud.
Oh,
That's
man.
all that Ember is, right? Like essentially.
True. That is true. Well, let's wrap this up the way that we always do. Let's run through some Easter eggs, some connective tissue, and some random thoughts. On page 4 of this book, we hear about Rikestra tables, and Rikestra is a dice game that was first introduced in A Test of Courage, and it's kind of a game that keeps being brought up. So it's kind of like the High Republic version of Sabacc.
Excellent.
On page 11, we get our obligatory Tuca Cat reference, so that didn't take very long.
That was real fast.
On page 13, a skimboard is mentioned, which is basically like Marty McFly's hoverboard from Back to the Future. But
I appreciate you, Charles.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. But interestingly, this was actually first created for the Galaxy of Fear series in Legends when it was written by Zach Aranda. And it was brought back to canon in Catalyst. Wouldn't expect that to come up in Catalyst, but it
that's
did.
fun.
You know, I feel like I remember them riding skimboards in Rocket Power as well, so we can add that to the reference.
Okay, great.
Wiggity, wiggity,
Perfect.
Wiggity. On page 18, the planet TK is mentioned, and that was a creation by Justina Ireland for her novel Out of the Shadows. But on Twitter, apparently, she admitted that the name came from her being tired of thinking of names for things. And so she wrote the letters TK, and that's apparently a publishing note for like to come later, like it's going to come later. And they ended up just using it, and they made the planet name TK. Yeah,
it's not even how you spell.
I know. I thought that was weird too. Who are we to question the publishers?
There was a beast in Rebels called the Tibidi, and that was from TBD in the design, and then they just called it the Tibidi.
No way.
Yep, it's in Rebels. That's on a Ghost Crew episode. Check out Patreon.
Well, speaking of things, Eric loves, on page 20, Alderaan gets a mention. So
speaking of dust,
fun.
yes.
Speaking of dust,
everything I love turns to dust in Star Wars. I'm realizing.
I gotta go. I got a gig. On page 21, Hynestia. Corey, you asked earlier if we knew this planet. It was mentioned. It's an ice planet with a Jedi outpost, and Stellan Gios was there later in the timeline. So miss you, Stellan,
buddy.
Good riddance. On page 25.
Jesus.
All righty.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. Holy smoke.
Let's see here. Lompop flowers from page 25. Those were created by Justina Ireland and featured in Mission to Disaster. On page 37, Nostra Berry wine is an alcoholic beverage from Dalna that found its way into every single Justina Ireland entry in the High Republic Initiative. It was in A Test of Courage, Mission to Disaster, Out of the Shadows, and now this book.
She needs an actual bottle marketed for her.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's just Zinfandel with a Star Wars logo on it, like,
and it's $17 a glass at Galaxy's Edge.
You're not wrong.
I'd buy it.
On page 58, Kevmo thinks this after meeting Marta for the first time. He'd need to spend extra time meditating this evening and maybe wear himself out completely drilling his lightsaber forms. Yeah, okay. Wear yourself out drilling lightsaber forms. Sure.
He goes to his room, Charles. And all you hear in the hallway is just the
I'm meditating.
Click. That's the lock of the door. Like, we all know what that means, dude.
Don't come in, master.
I mean, I'm bringing it up, but they wrote that knowing darn well what they did.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely true.
This
is a YA book. It's supposed to be relatable, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Kevin the Jedi, which I absolutely called him a ton in my head.
On page 65, Kevin the Jedi says that's not how the Force works. And there's a nice callback to Han Solo and TFA.
Perfect.
Let's see. On page 80, with respect to a dagger that the children are tasked with stealing, we have this quote, bin 5843. It's marked rare weapon, and the place of origin is ruins of Moraband. Where is that?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a nice callback to the homeworld of the ancient Sith, and this dagger probably came from Valley of the Dark Lords, where all their tombs were.
I love that.
Moraband.
On page 84, a Thelan is featured, and that's Chasna Chadic species. So that was fun. Another species that is kind of hated, right? Similarly to the Everending.
Decently.
Yeah, decently hated.
Decently.
On page
disliked extensively.
Level 7.
93, we learn about a guy named Sakar Rold, who came from the Guardians of the Wills and supposedly was the founder of the Path of the Open Hand. So we
That's
talked
right.
about how Jeddah and all these other,
Yeah.
groups are going to be worked into this. Well, there's a pretty big tie between the Guardians of the Wills and the Path of the Open Hand. On page 118, Han Talos is mentioned, which is a location visited by Jedi Knight Lily Toraasi in the. I laugh at that name every time.
Wonder why.
One more time, Livia.
I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. From the Edge of Balance manga. So she visited that planet multiple times. She did.
Just the worst.
That's
Absolutely the
funny.
worst.
I mean, you start
It's
running out of
funny.
names. So you got to start making names that sound like other things. On page
TK,
119, on page 119, here's a quote. Santekans wear a hard scrabble lot, just as likely to be government officials as independent contractors, but Sunshine still far preferred them to their rivals, the Graphs. Those flim-flamsters were just as likely to slide a blade between your ribs as sell you a navigable route. So we're learning more about the Santeca Graph dynamic, and we're broadening our vocabulary.
Yes, this is a family show, Charles. Watch your mouth.
That sounds like wherever in Star Wars this is. You're from the Minnesota of Star Wars. You're like, oh, those
Yes.
flamsters.
I
We
know.
got hard
Just a-
scrabble and
Oh,
flim-flamsters.
Just a
geez.
mere,
Oh,
just a
crap.
mere 50 pages earlier, we were talking about beating our meat. Now it's flim-flamsters. Here we are.
Oh my God. Corey, you're never allowed to do this or drink tea on the show ever again.
Earmuffs.
Stone cold sober.
Oh my gosh.
man.
All right.
Never again.
All right. The joke was that we didn't have to say it, but on page 135, Povo Punch, which is a drink, is mentioned, and that's a drink first featured in the High Republic Adventures Annual from 2021, where we learned that Hutts can't drink Povo Punch, and they get super insulted if you serve it around them.
Good to know.
It sounds like a force power that you unlock in like a game.
Sounds like Captain Falcon, like Captain Falcon's ultimate back in Super Smash Bros.
Oh man.
Yes.
Povo
Oh man, shout out
Punch.
Captain Falcon, a real one.
All right. On page
OG.
147, Elder Eris, who was kind of a low-key baller in the path, said, I like to think of the Force that way. Free, clear, and harmonious like a song. And there are many, many ways to make a harmony, and none inherently better than others. So kind of similar to how Avar views the Force, right? As a song, as a
sure.
harmony.
Yep,
Absolutely.
I caught that
Yeah.
I remember that.
On page 159, Kevmo plays Tajarik, aka Hollow Chess. So another fun game. On page 184, another quote for you. Oh, we were just looking at photos of the Graf family compound on Thelge. Even though Thelge was an icy mess most of the year, the compound itself was lush and blooming, a garden in the middle of a snowdrift. And so it seems like blooming gardens are kind of a theme for the Graf, hence the Graf family, rather, hence their space station Everbloom from Out of the Shadows, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Plants.
193, it's revealed that Sunshine is from Ariadu, the home world of Grand Moff Tarkin. So just crappy people come from there.
They're all bastards.
Very
Ariadu.
Ariadu,
and they suck.
Edu.
I saw a tweet today comparing Elon Musk to to Grand Moff Tarkin. It was pretty funny. Apparently, he disbanded the board of directors at Twitter today, and somebody quoted that line from episode 4 of like, the Senate will no longer be a problem as we have just disbanded it. I was like, this is kind of
Well, hey, I mean, that means he's only got what, a week left of running Twitter? Based on that
We'll see.
timeline of Tarkin, so
we'll see. Elon
Fingers
Musk is
crossed,
also
guys.
from Ariadu. You heard it here first.
absolutely confirmed.
On page 199, the Guardians of the Wills, the Sorcerers of Tund, I think it is.
Tund!
The Church of the Force and the Convocation itself are all mentioned. And of course, we know the Guardians of the Wills like Chirrut and Baze, the Church of the Force like Lor Santeca. The Sorcerers of Tund were kind of a deeper, more interesting reference because they're technically from Legends when they actually were first featured in L. Neil Smith's Lando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu.
Wow.
Yes.
But we have already seen
title.
them pulled to canon. They were actually mentioned in Dooku Jedi Lost by Kevin Scott when some of their artifacts are in the Bogan collection in the Jedi Temple. But then they were more recently featured along with the rest of the Convocation in the High Republic Comic Series 2022 in that first issue.
Also, you know what I need at some point? someone needs to draw out the Bogan collection from Dooku Jedi Lost, because I'm pretty sure there's roughly 84 things we've mentioned since that book came out that are in the Bogan collection. Like, Kevin just put the future of Star Wars in a vault.
It's like Hermione's purse, like the never-ending bag. You just keep reaching in there and pulling something out.
Exactly.
This too.
We're getting there.
On page 205, we have another quote here. Water was up to my knees when I first managed to pry the doors open. It must have gotten in when the landing foot was broken up at the bulkhead. When it dries, I expect a lot to go back to normal, but we need a new compressor under here, and they don't have any on the planet. We'll just bypass it. It's just a compressor.
Bypass the compressor.
You don't need a compressor.
It works everywhere. Use a hydro spanner and bypass the compressor. Works every time.
On page 253, another quote. Instead, she just strapped into a chair and began to read one of the newest romances from the HoloNet. This one revolved around a senator who fell in love with a Jedi who was torn between his allegiance to the Order and the love of his life. Yana thought it was a bit far-fetched, but it was a good way to pass the time in hyperspace.
This is one of the only things I highlighted when I read this on Kindle.
Oh yeah,
I saved this quote because it was I was like, this is great. A bit far-fetched. I almost screenshotted it and sent you.
Like, little much.
I downloaded the soundbite from episode 2.
I know. It's funny.
On page 316, another quote. It had grown again since Yana had last seen it. It was nearly of a size with the Charhound. So shout out to Ember.
Yes, our boy.
Yes. On page 344, another quote. Reassurance, connection, the living force was all he needed. That's right. The Living Force podcast every Monday night at 8 p.m. EST. Reassurance, connection, all you need.
That's the next shirt. That's the next shirt.
On a t-shirt. That's me on a t-shirt.
Finally, on page 345, we have this quote in reference to Kevmo and Zala. Both their lightsabers were missing. Now we know who took Kevmo's lightsaber, but Zala's lightsaber has gone missing as well. So who took that? I don't know.
Mother has it, and they're going to fight to the death with lightsabers.
Why not? Yeah. Why not? I love a good duel.
So that's it, y'all. Those are all the biggest Easter eggs that I could find. If I missed any, if I missed your favorite one, for sure leave it in the comments or let us know because I love these things. They're a lot of fun. But that's it. So let's go back around. Let's give any final thoughts that we have on this book, and then let's get out of here until next Monday.
Yeah, I think my final thoughts are, especially after our conversation, I respect especially the end of this book on everything it did for the High Republic Phase 2. I think that even though the experience of reading the whole story was not my favorite as far as just the book goes, I completely now get why they started here and why this is a jumping off point from the initiative, because it expands the big bads, it expands the evil creatures, it introduces the Jedi to the ideas of this thing, it brings us to Jedha, it brings us to Marta, Yana, the Leveler, like all the stuff that it sets up is so enticing and exciting, and I'm glad that that's propelling us forward. I think that, you know, some folks are really going to fall in love with some of the things that we didn't like, and that's great. I think that, you know, each book is someone's favorite, and that's awesome. But overall, I think that this ends in a really exciting point. And I don't think I've seen a High Republic book kind of tee up everyone else in the initiative quite as well as this one.
Yeah, I really liked how when I first started reading it, that I was like, this is the very beginning. This is 200 years before Phase 1. This is book 1, and everything else happens after it. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, there's got to be something that happened before this. And I kept thinking about those, and me just talking about that with you guys kind of solidified that fact. And honestly, just tonight, talking about this book, it was a great time. I didn't think we were going to have this good a conversation about a book that we thought was kind of so-so, but it's, I mean, like most of the parts that we saw were interesting, that were very climatic, even before like the 130, 180 pages of like build up, but we got to where we wanted to get to. I mean, having the conversation with people that also like the same thing, it will build your enjoyment for the book you just read. And this really helped out. Just having the show with you guys and talking with the chat. And Stephanie, you're reminding me of like hundreds of things that I forgot from Phase 1. Thank you for taking all those notes.
We love you.
Yeah, I think I like those things too. Of like, I I think it was really risky to start the phase with a YA book in particular. I think it had really big shoes to fill with Light of the Jedi that, quite frankly, I don't think anybody would have been able to fill to kick off the phase. And yeah, I think there's a lot to like about the book. I think I probably disliked it the most out of all of us, at least from our other conversations we've had about it. And it definitely grew on me talking about it. So, I'm excited to be back in the High Republic. I think that's the biggest takeaway. And this era is continually fun to explore, and they keep inventing new stuff that adds a new dynamic to Star Wars, which is pretty impressive considering how well developed Star Wars book community is at this point. So, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I agree with all of it. Everything you guys have said. Really, I think the end of this book is about as good as the High Republic has been. I mean, I think the end is on par with the best that we've gotten from phase 1. And I think that's promising. I mean, I think it still points to the fact that they've got a great idea of what they're doing. They know where this story is going. And while maybe, some of the grunt work in this book was to its own detriment, it's like you said, Eric, it might be for the benefit of the rest of the phase and maybe even the rest of the initiative. So there have to be books like this or parts of books like this because they're world building, they're galaxy building at the end of the day. And I think that we're going to get a lot of good stories still left in this initiative. So it's exciting. And I'm already looking forward to the next one.
Totally.
Absolutely. Which, again, is coming out tomorrow. If you guys are completionists, George Mann's Quest for the Hidden City, the junior novel / middle grade / I don't know what to call them ever. But that comes out tomorrow. Very fun adventure book. Look for the review on Utini. And then, of course, the next giant edition is going to be Zoraida Cordova's Convergence, coming out November 22nd. Before we get into that, of course, next week, I'm going to give you all a little preview. We're going to have a little chat about the future of the show. Last week, we didn't have a show. The four of us did, though, get together and just kind of talk about the last 4 years and the next 4 years of the Living Force. And we're excited to kind of share with you guys about some ways the show is going to evolve into its next way. There's nothing bad, nothing dire. We're still here. We're doing all our stuff.
I was going to say, we've actually decided to end it. This is what we're going to tell you guys.
Corey, go practice your lightsaber forms. You need to chill out.
This is going to be a joke forever now. Oh my god.
So next week we will share with y'all a little bit about like tonight how the roundtables are going to evolve a little bit. That same kind of vibe. So we'll see you next week for that. But for right now, it's lightsaber night, and that will do it, everybody, for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you support us on Patreon, I am so sorry, but I thank you anyway. Head over to patreon.com/Utini. Learn about all the ways you can help support our thriving community. A special thank you goes out to Brian Dooley, Patrick Ortiz, Earl Q, Robert Thomas, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Elizabeth Cloutier, Ashley Ingalls, and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Eric Eilerson, Corey is at Corey M. Helton, Charles is at C. Henkel, Wes is at Boss Wes. A special thank you to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Ryan, our graphic designer extraordinaire, who again put that awesome new graphic at the beginning of the show, and Wes, our producer and community manager. Thank you to Corey, Charles, and Wes for potting with me tonight. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And as always, may the Force be with you.